Welcome back to Narration Network. Get ready for a heart-pounding journey as young Noah's life takes a dark and twisted turn. One moment, he's a carefree 10-year-old dreaming of football stardom. The next, he's thrown into a world of terror and survival. Abducted in broad daylight, he wakes up in a grim underground facility filled with snarling, dangerous dogs and a sinister figure who has only one message for him: survive or perish. Noah's about to face a nightmare beyond his wildest imagination, where escaping alive seems impossible. But he's determined to defy the odds. The story begins with Noah, the boy who never imagined his life would take such a drastic turn. At 10 years old, he was just an ordinary kid with dreams of becoming a football player, living in a small town with his mother. But that ordinary life was shattered one fateful afternoon when a group of men kidnapped him from the park. His mother's face, twisted in fear, was the last thing he remembered before a black van swallowed him up. He awoke in a place that was both terrifying and alien, an underground facility deep in the countryside where the stench of wet fur and grime assaulted his senses. In a dimly lit room, lined with steel bars, Noah found himself surrounded by dogs, large, intimidating, aggressive creatures that snarled and snapped at one another. Before he could comprehend his situation, a man with cold, calculating eyes and a thin smile approached. "You're going to be here for a while," the man said, voice dripping with cruelty. "Learn to survive and maybe you'll make it out." Then he tossed a few scraps of meat on the floor. Dog food. Noah's heart sank. He wasn't just kidnapped, he was caged. Noah woke up in complete darkness. His head throbbed, his mouth dry, and his body ached from the rough handling. The air was thick with a putrid smell, wet fur, sweat, and decay. Slowly, his eyes adjusted to the dim light, and the horrifying reality of his situation came into view. He was inside a cage. Cold, metal bars surrounded him, and the floor beneath him was dirt, damp with a foul-smelling liquid. But worse than the cage was what lay inside it. Large, muscular dogs prowled around him, their eyes glinting in the low light. They were not the friendly kind of dogs he had seen in the park. These were animals bred for aggression, their fur matted with filth, their bodies scarred from countless fights. A voice echoed through the room. "Welcome to your new home, kid," it said, chilling Noah to the core. A tall man with a cruel smile stood on the other side of the bars, watching him. "If you want to live, you better learn quick." The man left Noah with a pile of scraps on the floor, raw meat and bones, tossed carelessly into the cage. At first, Noah recoiled, disgusted by the smell and the sight of the half-rotten food. But the dogs didn't hesitate. In a flurry of snarling and growling, they descended on the pile, tearing into the meat with razor-sharp teeth. Noah backed into a corner, his heart pounding. The cage was small, and the dogs seemed larger than life, their jaws snapping inches from his face. He watched them warily, trying to figure out a way to survive. His stomach growled, but there was no way he could compete with them for food. Days passed, and Noah grew weaker. The dogs ignored him, focused on their own survival, but hunger gnawed at him relentlessly. He had no choice. He had to eat or starve. Slowly, carefully, he crept toward the scraps left behind by the pack. They were nothing more than bones now, but in his desperation, Noah gnawed on them, scraping off what little meat was left. As the days turned into weeks, Noah began to understand the dogs' behavior. They had a hierarchy, an unspoken rule of dominance that dictated who ate first and who was left with the scraps. The largest dog, a brutish Rottweiler with a jagged scar across its muzzle, was the alpha. The others followed its lead, deferring to it in every aspect of their grim existence. Noah watched them closely, learning their ways. They communicated through subtle body language, a twitch of the ear, a lowered tail, a bared tooth, and in time, he began to mimic them. He ate when they ate, slept when they slept, and stayed out of their way when they were agitated. Months passed. Noah was no longer the terrified boy cowering in the corner of the cage. He had become part of the pack, not by choice, but by necessity. His body, once small and weak, had grown lean and muscular from years of scavenging and fighting for survival. His once soft features had hardened, his eyes now cold and calculating, much like the dogs he lived with. One day, the man who had captured Noah returned, as he did from time to time, to check on his twisted project. But this time, he didn't come to torment Noah or mock his situation. Instead, he stood outside the cage, grinning with satisfaction. "You're ready now," the man said, as though Noah had been part of some dark experiment. "It's time for you to repay the investment we've made in you." Confused and angry, Noah listened as the man explained his twisted scheme. He was not just keeping Noah imprisoned for amusement, there was a plan. The man, who introduced himself as Victor, was the leader of a powerful criminal syndicate that specialized in high-stakes burglaries. His methods were elaborate, relying on inside information and precision, but he needed someone who could slip under the radar. For 5 years, Noah had been groomed for one purpose: to use the pack of dogs he had trained to break into the homes of the wealthy elite. "You see," Victor explained, "no one suspects a pack of dogs. You've earned their loyalty, trained them, mauled them fierce. Now, you'll lead them into mansions, estates, anywhere that holds enough treasure to make it worthwhile. And in return, you'll earn your freedom." Noah felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Freedom. The very word, after all those years, sent a wave of longing through him. But the price? Using his bond with the dogs, his only companions, to steal for Victor's criminal empire? One day, after what felt like years of captivity, the man who had thrown Noah into the cage returned. His name was Victor, and Noah had come to understand that he was not just a random kidnapper, he was the leader of a criminal syndicate. Victor's empire was built on a foundation of theft, extortion, and violence, and Noah was just another cog in his twisted machine. Victor stood outside the cage, a smug grin on his face. "Oh, well," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Look how you've grown. You've survived longer than I expected." Noah said nothing. He had learned that Victor fed off fear and desperation, and he refused to give him the satisfaction. "You see," Victor continued, pacing back and forth, "this wasn't just some random experiment. I needed someone special. Someone who could work with animals, lead them, control them. And now, you're ready." Noah's heart pounded. He didn't understand what Victor was getting at, but he knew it couldn't be good. Victor's eyes gleamed as he explained his plan. For years, he had been planning a series of high-profile robberies, heists, that would target the wealthiest individuals in the city. But these homes were fortresses, guarded by state-of-the-art security systems that no ordinary criminal could bypass. That's where Noah came in. Victor had been grooming him, shaping him into the perfect tool for his plan. Noah had spent years living with the dogs, training them, learning their behaviors. He had gained their trust, their loyalty. And now, Victor wanted him to use that bond to break into the homes of the rich. "No one suspects a pack of dogs," Victor said, smiling wickedly. "And with you leading them, we'll be unstoppable." Noah's mind raced. Victor was right. No one would suspect a group of dogs to pull off a heist. But the thought of using the animals, his only companions, for such a dark purpose, filled him with dread. Still, the promise of freedom hung in the air. Victor had made it clear, if Noah complied, he would be free. After 5 long years in captivity, the thought of escaping the cage, of seeing the outside world again, was almost too tempting to resist. Noah, now 15 years old and physically transformed by years of rough survival, was faced with a choice: either comply with Victor's demands or remain in the cage, forever a prisoner. Reluctantly, he agreed. He couldn't survive in captivity any longer. The mansion loomed before them, its sprawling silhouette framed against the moonlit sky. The estate belonged to a wealthy businessman who had made a fortune in real estate. Victor's orders were clear. They were to steal as much as possible from the vault hidden inside the house's library, a collection of priceless jewels, cash, and documents that Victor believed held enough value to cripple one of his biggest rivals. Noah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his decision sinking in. For 5 years, he had been trapped in a cage, eating scraps and living like an animal. And now, the only chance he had to escape this life was through a chain of crimes, stealing from people he had never met, all for Victor's greed. His heart ached with the contradiction of it all. On one hand, freedom was so close, he could almost taste it. On the other, each crime felt like a step further into darkness. Behind him, the rest of the dogs moved silently, their claws barely making a sound as they padded across the gravel path. The Dobermans, with their sleek, muscular bodies, flanked him on either side, while a pair of German shepherds brought up the rear. They were trained now, as much by Noah as by their own instincts. Each dog knew its role, its place in the pack, and they followed Noah's every command with unwavering loyalty. As they approached the back entrance of the estate, Noah paused, his breath fogging in the cool night air. He checked the small earpiece Victor had given him, listening for any updates. The security cameras had been disabled remotely, and the guards had been bribed to turn a blind eye. It was now or never. "Go," he whispered, releasing Razor's leash. The Rottweiler moved forward, his body low and quiet as he slunk toward the back gate. Noah had trained him well. Razor knew exactly where to go, slipping through the shadows undetected. Within moments, the sound of a low growl echoed through the air, followed by the soft click of a lock being undone. Razor had successfully triggered the gate's electronic lock with the device strapped to his collar. Noah's heart pounded as the gate swung open, and he led the rest of the dogs inside. They moved like a well-oiled machine, navigating the darkened estate grounds with precision. Noah had studied the blueprints Victor had given him for weeks, memorizing every inch of the mansion's layout, every hidden passage, and every potential obstacle. But no amount of preparation could ease the knot of anxiety twisting in his gut. He wasn't a criminal. He was just a kid who had been forced into a life he never asked for. As they approached the side door of the mansion, Noah hesitated, his hand hovering over the doorknob. "Focus," he muttered to himself. He had to get through this. He had to survive. The door creaked open, and they slipped inside. The mansion's interior was a stark contrast to the cage Noah had been trapped in for so long. The floors were polished marble, gleaming under the soft glow of recessed lighting. Expensive artwork adorned the walls, and the air smelled faintly of lavender and leather, a scent so foreign to Noah's senses that it almost made him dizzy. Razor led the way, his ears pricked and his nose twitching as he sniffed the air for any signs of danger. The rest of the dogs followed, their bodies low and alert. Noah's fingers brushed the collar of one of the Dobermans, silently reassuring the animal as they made their way through the opulent hallways. The library was located on the second floor, down a long corridor lined with windows. Noah's heart raced as they ascended the staircase, each step bringing them closer to the vault. He had never seen wealth like this before. The marble statues, the crystal chandeliers, the silk curtains that swayed gently in the evening breeze. It all seemed so unreal, so out of place in his world of survival and desperation. When they reached the library, Noah took a deep breath and crouched beside the door. His hands moved with practiced precision as he pulled out a small toolkit Victor had given him. He had spent weeks learning how to pick locks, practicing on old doors and safes Victor had brought to the warehouse where they kept him. It had been grueling work, but Noah had no choice. This was his ticket to freedom, or so he had been told. The lock clicked open, and Noah pushed the door ajar. The library was even more extravagant than the rest of the house, with floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with leather-bound books and a large fireplace that crackled softly in the corner. The vault was hidden behind one of the bookshelves, a secret compartment Noah had studied endlessly from the blueprints. He approached the bookshelf, his fingers tracing the spines of the books as he searched for the hidden mechanism that would reveal the vault. His heart raced as he found it, a small latch disguised as a bookend. With a soft click, the bookshelf slid open, revealing a heavy steel door. The dogs remained silent, their eyes locked on Noah as he knelt in front of the vault. He could feel their anticipation, their trust. They had been with him through everything, and now they were about to witness their first heist. Noah's fingers trembled as he entered the combination Victor had given him. The numbers felt foreign under his touch, like he was stepping into a world he didn't belong in. When the final digit clicked into place, the vault door swung open with a heavy groan. Inside was a treasure trove, stacks of cash, glittering jewels, and documents worth more than Noah could ever imagine. His eyes widened as he stared at the fortune before him, the weight of it pressing down on his chest. This was it. This was what Victor wanted. But as Noah reached for the first stack of cash, something inside him faltered. The dogs watched him closely, their eyes reflecting the uncertainty that now gripped his heart. This wasn't who he was. This wasn't what he had ever wanted. In the silence of the library, Noah could hear the faint hum of the security system, the soft crackle of the fire, and the steady breathing of the dogs beside him. He could feel the weight of their loyalty, their trust in him. And for the first time in years, Noah realized that he didn't want to be Victor's puppet anymore. He didn't want to steal. He didn't want to hurt people he didn't even know. But Victor had promised freedom. Victor had promised he would let Noah go if he completed this job. Noah swallowed hard and grabbed the cash, stuffing it into a bag he had brought with him. He couldn't back out now. He had come too far. As he turned to leave, a noise caught his attention. His heart leapt into his throat as he heard the soft click of a door opening. Razor growled low in his throat, the other dogs tensing as they prepared for a fight. A man stood in the doorway. A tall, middle-aged man in a silk robe, his eyes wide with shock as he took in the scene before him. Noah froze, his heart pounding in his chest. For a moment, neither of them moved. The man's gaze shifted from Noah to the dogs, to the open vault, and then back to Noah. His expression was one of disbelief, confusion, and something else. Something that Noah couldn't quite place. He expected the man to scream, to call for help, to fight back. But instead, the man simply backed away, his face pale, his hands trembling as he held them up in surrender. Noah hesitated. He could feel Razor's tension, the pack ready to attack at a moment's notice. But something in the man's eyes stopped him. This man wasn't a monster. He wasn't Victor. He was just a victim of a world Noah had been forced into. With a soft command, Noah called off the dogs. They relaxed, though their eyes never left the man, as Noah slung the bag over his shoulder and quickly exited the library. The dogs followed him, their bodies tense but obedient. As they made their way back through the mansion, Noah's mind raced. The heist had been a success, but at what cost? What was he becoming? The night air hit him like a wave as they slipped through the back gate and into the shadows. Noah's heart pounded in his chest, the weight of the stolen fortune heavy on his back. He had done it. He had completed the heist. But as they disappeared into the darkness, Noah couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The heists continued, each one more elaborate than the last. Noah became known as the Phantom Trainer in underground circles, though no one knew his true identity. He had become a tool for Victor, stealing millions from the city's wealthiest, all while trying to hold on to the last fragments of his humanity. But with every success, Noah felt the chains tighten around him. The dogs, once his companions in survival, had become instruments of crime. They were loyal, yes, but they were also caught in the web of darkness Noah couldn't escape from. Noah's world became a blur of heists and silent nights. Each new job added to Victor's wealth, but it did nothing for Noah's soul. He had been promised freedom, but it always seemed just out of reach, dangled like a carrot before a horse. Until one day he decided it had to stop. Noah knew there would be no easy way out of Victor's grip. Victor was too powerful, too ruthless. But there was one last heist on the horizon. The biggest one yet. A multi-million-dollar job that would secure Victor's criminal empire for years. Noah made a decision that night. This would be his final heist. Not because of the money, but because it would be the end of Victor's reign. On the night of the heist, Noah led his pack through the city, but this time, he had a different plan. Instead of heading to the mansion, he led the dogs to Victor's compound, where all of the stolen wealth had been stored. He had trained the dogs to navigate the security, to disable the traps Victor had set up for intruders. With precision, Noah led the dogs inside, but instead of stealing the loot, he triggered the alarms. Victor's men swarmed the compound, but Noah was ready. The dogs, loyal to him and only him, turned on the guards, distracting them while Noah made his way to Victor's office. There, in the heart of Victor's operation, Noah confronted the man who had imprisoned him for 5 years. Victor, unafraid, laughed when Noah walked into the room. "You think you can stop me?" he sneered. "You're just a kid, a boy raised by dogs." Noah stood tall, eyes cold. "Maybe I am, but I'm free now, and you won't control anyone else." Before Victor could react, the dogs, led by the alpha, charged into the room surrounding him. They didn't attack, but the threat was clear. Victor, realizing he had lost control, scrambled for an escape, but there was nowhere to run. Noah had won, not by violence, but by turning the very tools Victor had used against him. Noah called the police. By the time they arrived, Victor was tied up, surrounded by the wealth he had accumulated from years of theft. The authorities were baffled by the scene. A teenage boy with a pack of dogs had brought down one of the city's most powerful criminals. As Noah sat in the police station, finally free from Victor's grip, he reflected on everything that had happened. The years in the cage, the heists, the bond with the dogs. It had all been a twisted game orchestrated by a man consumed by greed. But Noah had survived, and in the end, he had found his way out. The dogs, his faithful companions, were taken in by an animal shelter where they would be cared for. Noah, though still haunted by his past, was offered a second chance, a chance to live a life free from cages, both literal and figurative. And though his journey had been dark, Noah knew one thing for certain: he would never let anyone control his fate again. In the end, it wasn't about the money or the power. It was about freedom and the strength to take it back. Subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching.